In a desert where there is not a single river, 30,000 people found a way to live. They didn't build their city from brick or timber. They carved it directly from the rock. Entire facades, columns, palaces, tombs 40 meters high, each cut by hand without a single crack. Outside, mountains and desert. Inside, one of the wealthiest cities of the ancient world. Petra was not an accident. It was an engineering masterpiece, built by a people you have probably never heard of. The Nabateans controlled every trade route between Arabia, Egypt, Syria, and the Mediterranean. And at the heart of their empire, they built a city that could not be found, could not be besieged, and could never be forgotten. These are its streets. Before speaking of the streets, we need to understand where Petra actually is. Today, it sits in the south of modern Jordan. In ancient times, at the very heart of the trading world, the Nabateans appeared in these lands around the 4th century BC, a nomadic Arab people who gradually settled and built a state. Their capital occupied a mountain stronghold, a hidden valley surrounded on all sides by sheer cliffs of rose-pink sandstone, rising up to 100 meters. There was only one way in, through the narrow canyon called the Seek, 1.5 kilometers between rock walls just 3 meters wide. In places, the sky above narrows to a single strip of light. This path was simultaneously the only entrance and the finest natural defense in the world. Any army could be stopped by a dozen archers on the cliffs above. By the 1st century AD, Petra had reached its peak. Population between 20 and 30,000 people. By the standards of the desert, a megacity. The Nabateans controlled the Great Incense Road, the trade route along which frankincense and myrrh traveled from Yemen and Oman to the Mediterranean. Everything passed through Petra. Beyond incense, pepper and spices from India, silk from China, gold and ivory from Africa, bronze from Greece. 20,000 tons of goods passed through Petra every single year. The Nabateans charged a toll for passage from every caravan, every camel, every bundle. They became extraordinarily wealthy, and with that wealth, they built something impossible. The first thing that struck a traveler arriving in Petra was the scale. You emerge from the tight walls of the Seek, and suddenly before you stands a facade 40 meters high. Carved columns, urns, goddesses, eagles, all cut from a single mass of rose-red sandstone. This is the Khazne, the treasury. But the treasury was not a palace. Scholars believe it was a tomb, or a temple, or perhaps all at once. Stepping into the valley, you entered a real city. At the center, the main street. A colonnaded road paved with stone, rows of columns on both sides with shops behind them. Markets, taverns, workshops, everything you would find in Rome or Alexandria, but with one crucial difference. Homes, tombs, shrines, storerooms, all of it carved into the rock. Petra was a city where the boundary between architecture and nature simply did not exist. The wealthy lived in enormous cave complexes with carved facades, polished floors, and even heating systems. The poor, in simple niches draped with cloth. In the valley stood a theatre seating 4,000, also carved from the rock. Beside it, baths, a great trading market, several temples. And everywhere, water. This is the greatest miracle of Petra that almost no one knows about. In a city with no river, the Nabateans created a water system that supplied 30,000 people year-round. They built dams that intercepted rare flash floods. They cut channels and pipes through the rock to transport water. They carved thousands of cisterns into the stone for storage. They directed springs through stone aqueducts across the mountains. Engineers in the 21st century still study this system today. The Nabateans had several secrets that made them richer than all their neighbors. The first, Petra itself. The city's exact location was known only to them for many years. To everyone else, these were simply mountains. When Alexander the Great tried to find the Nabateans, they hid in their rocks, and his army left empty-handed. The second secret: water. The Nabateans were the first people in history to develop industrial-scale rainwater harvesting in the desert. They understood how flash floods worked, how to store water in stone, how to carry it through pipes for kilometers. This knowledge was their greatest competitive advantage. But there was a third secret. The Nabateans developed their own alphabet, and this alphabet changed the world, because from it came the Arabic script, used today by more than 2 billion people. Merchants who traded spices and incense accidentally created a writing system for half the world's population. Another mystery of Petra: its tombs. The Nabateans buried their dead in the rock. Thousands of tombs, from simple niches to enormous royal mausoleums. But inside most of them, almost nothing has been found. No mummies, no treasures, no inscriptions. Where did the bodies go? Where did the gold go? Still unknown. And finally, the strangest thing of all. The Nabateans depicted their gods as simple rectangular stone blocks. No faces, no bodies, just stone. At a time when the entire ancient world was creating elaborate sculptures of deities, the Nabateans worshipped rectangular slabs. Some scholars see in this a precursor to the monotheism that would later spread from these very lands to the whole world. Petra did not fall by the sword. The first blow was struck not by enemies, but by trade routes. In the 1st century AD, the Romans mastered the monsoon winds and began sailing directly from Egypt to India by sea. The need to carry goods overland through the desert, through Petra, dropped sharply. Trade began to bypass the city. In 106 AD, Rome annexed the Nabatean kingdom without a single battle. The last Nabatean king, Rabel II, died, and Rome simply declared the territory its own province, Arabia Petraea. Petra became a Roman city. New temples in the Roman style appeared, new streets, new coins bearing the emperor's face. But trade kept moving away. In 363 AD, a massive earthquake destroyed much of the city, including the critically important water system. Without water, 30,000 residents could not survive. People began to leave, first by the thousands, then by the tens of thousands. By the 7th century, only a handful of monks and nomads remained in Petra. And then the city simply disappeared. For the Western world, for a full 1,000 years. No maps, no records, no route. Local Bedouins knew of it, of course. They led their goats through the sick, used the cisterns, sheltered in the carved tombs. But for Europe, Petra did not exist. Until 1812, when a young Swiss explorer named Johann Ludwig Burckhardt disguised himself as a Muslim pilgrim, hired a Bedouin guide, and walked into the sick. What he saw became one of the greatest discoveries in the history of geography. Today, Petra is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the 7 new wonders of the world. More than 1 million tourists a year walk through the sick and come face to face with the treasury. But most see only a small fraction. Only 15% of Petra has been excavated. The remaining 85% lies underground. In 2016, scientists using satellite imagery discovered an enormous buried complex beneath the city centre, as large as a modern football stadium. A completely unexpected find in a city that has been studied for 200 years. Petra still holds its secrets, and the Nabatean water system has inspired modern engineers designing water infrastructure in arid regions, from Israel to Saudi Arabia. The alphabet they created became Arabic script. The trade routes they controlled became the foundation for the Silk Road and modern supply chains. A people almost no one knows left their mark on every one of us. And in a desert with no river, a city of rose stone still stands. Its streets are quiet, the markets empty, the camels gone. But the rock itself goes nowhere. It remembers everything.